This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the Ghee Spot Podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us for conversations around sex, spirit, and all things self-care. All things self-care. All things self-care.
This is a journey into sound.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
You are a Ghee Spot Podcast with Katie Silcox.
All right, everybody, we are here with a special guest today. And before we introduce her, I just want to, as always, thank our sponsor, Amaury Ghee. We love them so much, and I recently asked them about their flavor ghee, and she wrote back, we have 7 flavors. Some are sweet, some savory. They're all versatile. I spread lemon garlic ghee or on toast and add a sprinkle of salt. It's drop dead delicious. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. We're going to have Brodie Welch, who is our guest today, with us, and we're going to be talking about all things goddess, yin, and how women really need to care for themselves. And so head over to Amaury Ghee, and we're going to put you guys with all the links for them, and make sure to check out their amazing Ethiopian ghee and their chai ghee and their vanilla ghee. And we really appreciate them sponsoring this podcast. Their website is iloveghee.com. What could be better? And as I said, I'm here with Brodie, who we've known each other. I think I was on your podcast, Brodie, and that's how we met. But I feel like there are so many of us out in the world, these like women that wish that they were living together in the same like big lady commune, and we're kind of peppered all over the world, and yet we know each other when we're with each other. And so I'm really happy that you're here, and I want to let our listeners know about you. Brodie is an acupuncturist. She's an herbalist. She's also a self-care strategist, and her specialty is helping self-aware, high-achieving women break the cycle of stress, overwhelm, and self-sabotage so they can enjoy the lives they're working so hard to create and live their potential. That sounds a lot like someone I know. I'm sure it sounds a lot like a lot of our listeners. She's also the creator of a holistic boot camp program called Level Up Your Life, which helps women bridge the gap between what they know they should be doing to take care of themselves and actually doing it without feeling guilty, which is huge. She's the founder of Life and Balance Acupuncture in Corvallis, Oregon, where she has been treating patients since 2003. She's also the creator and host of A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. And we're going to put all the links to connect with Brodie in the show notes later. But I'm just so happy that you're here, and welcome to the Ghee Spot.
I am so excited to talk to you, Katie. I love your show, and I so resonate with the message that you're trying to get out there in the world. Although I do have to correct you. We've known each other longer than that.
Oh my God, tell me, please, correct me.
The prana immersion in
Claudia.
California. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And that was, so that's where we actually met in the flesh. But
I was like,
lifetime ago.
I know. I was like, I know Brodie. I know her so well. Like, there are all these women where I'm like, well, actually, you've met once or twice. And so, yeah, I almost asked you, how did we actually meet? But I feel like, this is, we're all on the journey and kind of bumping into each other. I do have the vision that one day we'll all kind of stop and just come together.
I love that vision. I'm all for it. Let's have it happen.
So I think that, I remember meeting you, and I also remember talking with you extensively. And I thought, you know what, this woman is so cool because she's so smart, but I sense that she has this massive heart, and she really gets the essence of these deep and complex teachings that I know your specialty has been in Chinese medicine, obviously, and Ayurveda. And so I just love what you're doing as well. And so I want to talk about what seems to be the emerging place that it's so fun to watch your evolution, as I'm sure you're watching mine, and to see the parallels because you're like, hi, I'm obsessed with like the erotic and the feminism of all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, that is exactly what I'm obsessed with. So why don't we start off with that? What is this new obsession with honoring yin and well, they're actually two different things. So where should we go first? Let me ask you.
Well, I think the first place to go is I guess just to share a little bit about like how I got so turned on to sort of like this honoring your yin, and really like my mission right now is to help women embody self-respect, like embody it. How often would we not take any, like somebody tells you that, hey, stop resting, you need to get up and cook my dinner. Like we probably wouldn't stand for that. Like if someone was like, hey, you think you're, like how could you dare to, eat when you're hungry, or go for a walk instead of sitting at your computer chained to your keyboard until you've written this email or finished this project. It's like the way that if somebody else from the external world, especially if it were a man, right? If somebody were to say that to us, we'd probably be like, F you. Yeah, exactly. Like, step off. Like, like what an ass. Like, that we wouldn't take that from anyone else. But the way that we treat ourselves it can be very self-negating, because we as women in this society often are motivated to, we live in a very yang world, right? If we're thinking about yin and yang as these two forces, that yang is the active, the busy, the moving, the speed, the what it looks like as opposed to what it feels like. And the yin is the slow. It's the deep, it's the feminine, it's the inner, it's the body. And it's like, so we're in this culture that utterly overvalues yang and devalues yin, right? Like
can I just pause and highlight
Absolutely.
What you just said?
Yeah.
That is one of the most beautiful definitions of yin and yang. So the yang or yang values doing, and how does it, what was it that you said? Say it again, instead of how does it feel?
How it looks. It's the external.
How does it look? How does it look instead of how does it feel?
Right. And so if we're women in this yang culture, well, so first of all, we're anyone in this yang culture, we're supposed to be focusing. Yeah. Like, well, so we're capitalism, right? So we're supposed to be producing. There's this value on profit. There's this value of sacrificing your human needs on the altar of production, productivity, and profit, which is essentially inhumane, and essentially takes us, there's I think a lot wrong with the way that that our society is structured, just in that regard of that people can't keep up with the demands a lot of times of their jobs, and just how much else we have to sort of scrunch our humanity into this tiny, into our free time. Can't have emotions between 8 and 5, can't tend to your body, much less your soul. So there's this, and really, of course, our society is all about speed, right? Like the pace of life is getting faster. We're interconnected. Social media, like the 24-hour news cycle, like everything is happening so fast. And we're supposed to be paying attention to so much out here. And this is true for everyone, where that kind of like the deep, quiet inner voice that we all have, there's not a whole lot of cultural incentive to tune into it. And that's, I think, first of all, tragic. And then we as women layered on top of this, that I would see in my acupuncture practice, I would work with very smart, very self-aware women who would come to me and say like, okay, I've got insomnia, or I've got menopausal symptoms. I've got hot flashes and night sweats, or I've got digestive issues, or I'm anxious or depressed, or whatever it is that they have. And I would assign them things like, okay, well, what can you subtract? Can you take a half an hour a day to yourself? and they'd look at me like I was crazy, first of all, but I would literally write this on a self-care prescription pad. And then I would see them a month later for their little check-in tune-up treatment. And I'd be like, hey, so how did it go with that half-hour day for yourself? Or how did it go with that starting your meditation practice, or that taking a walk, or taking time to make yourself nourishing food, or getting enough sleep? The absolute basics that Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, functional medicine, and probably every other system of medicine on the planet has to say are like the basic components that we all need to thrive. And so these women would say to me like, oh yeah, like I did great for about 3 days after I saw you. And then, life happened. And life happened to me as like they fell off the top of their own to-do list, right? That like other priorities took precedence over their own self-care. And so, and self-care, I don't even like the word self-care anymore, which is why I'm shifting it to how we embody self-respect through our daily actions.
Yes, I'm going to copy you and credit you.
Great, do it. It's a movement. And
everything you're saying, can I just give one beautiful example of this in intergenerational, Prashanti Dejagar is one of teachers in our training last year, and he was like, the wise voice of the woman is being stifled because we haven't taken time out to listen to ourselves. And if we can't listen, then we can't speak our wise voice. And I was with my mom last week at her house, and my mom is the product of the 1950s child, where she saw her mom locked and chained in the kitchen, where she got her worth and value by being a homemaker only. And she was like, F that, I'm going to take on the world and burn my bra and like kick ass and have a business. And my mom came to visit me last week, and I was like, Mom, you are going so fast. Like, I can't even interface and relate to you, and I'm not being seen by you. And if you can't see me, you can't love me. And she just like, I hope she doesn't mind I'm saying this, because my mom's so rad and so tuned. Yeah. And she just sort of burst into tears and was like, I know, like I'm going so fast doing. And I think it's bigger than, like, I think it's just this like generational curse almost, that we think that we are going to find our self-worth in this doing.
Yeah. Oh, and that must have been heartbreaking for your mom, because of course, she loves you and wants to connect with you. But there's,
and we do, right?
Yeah.
Like we're tantric, we're like, let's burn this shit because we love each other so much. And she is so willing to be like, you know what, I'm going to look at my shit, and I'm going to look at the way that Brodie, another thing that to-do list, I think it also has to do with, what if I stop? What am I going to have to feel?
Oh, exactly. What am I going to have to feel if I stop? Also, it involves putting down some social mask that our ego has built up, that we're putting our chi and blood into it to construct, that may or may not be, like, for some people it's a caricature of our innate nature, but it's just like bigger than life kind of. And that's
I like that idea,
so that's sort of like in a 5-element schema in Chinese medicine. It's like those are some ways that some patterns of depletion is kind of like the element that we identify with most becomes our whole identity at the expense of all the other elements that we have within us.
Oh, good. Oh, wait, everybody needs to hear that again. The element that we identify with the most becomes sort of over bloated.
Yeah, like we put all of our energy into that because it's comfortable and it's safe, and it's limiting because it means that we are not getting to stretch and grow into the other dimensions of who we are. And that is our birthright, is to blend all of these elements together. Exactly. To take us back, you just mentioned your mom and feminism and burning her bra and being and starting a business and like transcending what was expected of her.
Right.
I have been,
yay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought I started off my path thinking that I was going to change the world with a capital C as like an activist or something like that. And I was exposed to the poetry and speeches of Audre Lorde way back when. And I just re-listened to the uses of the erotic. And I heard it with whole new ears. Because
I haven't heard it. So everybody, we're going to put a link to it. We're all
Absolutely.
going to listen. Okay.
Absolutely. So, but check this out. I like just does if I can quote for a moment from
Please.
Audre Lorde. So
Wax.
so she talks about the erotic as a feminine force of power, right? A power from within, and that really and she talks about that when we're not living from this place, we basically that's that women are cut off from this power, and that's it, that when we are in touch with it, she says, when we are in touch with the power of the erotic within ourselves, allowing that power to inform and illuminate our actions upon the world around us, then we begin to be responsible to ourselves in the deepest sense. For as we begin to recognize our deepest feelings, we begin to give up of necessity, being satisfied with suffering and self-negation, and with the numbness, which so often seems like their only alternative in our society. Our acts against oppression become integral with self, motivated and empowered from within. In touch with the erotic, I become less willing to accept powerlessness or other supplied states of being which are not native to me, such as resignation, despair, self-effacement, depression, self-denial.
So then the question is begged. What is the
Yes.
erotic?
Well, the erotic is, I mean, that it's the source of feminine power. It is I think of it as like what Mary Oliver calls like letting the soft animal of your body love what it loves. You're in touch with the erotic when it feels good, when you think to yourself, this feels good. And that she like the erotic, capital E, is rooted in eros, right? Rooted in the Greek word for the god of love, right? So it's doing something, it's how we do something with love and with deep feeling and with presence that is not confined to the bedroom, right? It's about
Because I think when people hear
yes,
erotic,
yes,
that word has been so co-opted in such a negative way. But for
yes,
me, I'm studying the nervous system, and what I have been finding, having been in a male patriarchal lineage for a decade that served me in very many ways in a beautiful way, but was deeply lacking in what I actually needed, which is pleasure, and not some sort of debauchery, etc., but like deep, true pleasure of like sitting outside and meditating on the way that it feels when the wind touches my skin, and
yes.
literally letting that be my meditation instead of Jalandhara Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha Mulabandha, and like this
Oh, yeah.
focusing of the attention,
Yeah.
which was actually burning me out.
Yes, exactly. And so when you are just allowing yourself to feel and to let it in and to feel pleasure, like that can feel a little bit like dirty, right? It can feel a little bit like, ooh, should I be having this much, should I be enjoying this much in public?
Yeah.
And
No
it's
one
really,
knows. It's my little secret.
well, and how messed up is that, right?
I
Like
know.
that, just to allow ourselves to enjoy our lives, right? Because it's only when we slow down that we can get attuned to the subtle, right? And that so the subtle feelings of our bodies, and as well as the pleasures of simplicity, right? That like if we think about, I think about like the yin and yang of joy, right? Like that, and it's just the emotion of the heart, right? That joy we think of as this big over the top emotion, but its yin version is contentment. Its yin version is just deep appreciation of something that can be very quiet, and that we miss when we're moving so fast, or when we're forcing ourselves to, like even with like kind of self-care stuff of like, oh, I've got to work out, I've got to run, I've got to do, like I've all these expectations.
I gotta do massage.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to like just letting yourself, I mean, like just the difference between, massage as an example, slathering oil on yourself,
Get
like,
it on me.
yeah, versus just like really feeling a connection to your own being and feeling how good that feels. It's
there's a wonderful trauma expert that I've been studying with called Steve Hoskinson, and he says, I want you to put this on your refrigerator magnet. Your job is enjoyment. Your job is enjoyment. And that is ironically how the body dislodges freeze. fight, flight, and freeze are dislodged through the feeling of being safe and in pleasurable, like you said, not the top, but just this everyday ecstasy that I think might be what you're saying when you say erotic.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly that wasn't my word, that's Audre Lorde's, but but that sense of, yes, that sense of this feels right, and
And
this,
natural.
yes, exactly. It is, and in Chinese medicine, if I can geek out here for just a
Yeah.
moment, so in Chinese medicine, different aspects of the soul are said to live in different organ systems, or are
Okay.
associated with different organ systems. So the spirit of the lungs is called the Po, and it's the animal soul. It is the soul of like our animal instincts, our bodies. It's the corporeal soul that if you were to see a ghost, you're seeing someone's Po. You're seeing like the physical form of their spirit, like kind of as they were when they died. But in any case, like and so the Po is the lungs. It's the metal element. The kidneys is where our will lives, as well as our essence. And our kidneys and our heart need to communicate. The heart, stores the consciousness, or the Shen. The consciousness needs to recognize the essence in order for us to figure out what is ours to do moment by moment. And the way that fire communicates with water, the way that the heart communicates with
Fire is the heart, kidneys are water.
kidneys, water,
Okay.
and it communicates via the axis of metal, right? Of the lungs, the spirit of the Po. So that is a lot of how
Mind blowing.
we get there, right? Is
The five senses of your animal body.
Yeah, and the idea that and all of your senses, your intuitive sense, your gut brain, anytime you have an intuitive hit of this is the path that seems like it's going up, or I need to get the hell out of here because danger, whatever it is, that is, and like, so the lungs metal element is yin, relative to kind of like the other piece of the soul, the imagination or the creativity, the upward outward energy, which is associated with the liver. So kind of like both of those need to be present. We can't have creativity and upward outward energy without our sensitivity and our being able to take in, to be moved by something beautiful, or to be able to appreciate a particular moment.
So these are the channels of the heart and the kidney. So we would say like the yoni hridaya, almost like the heart womb. Would you say? Could we
Yeah, I think you could, because kidneys govern the reproductive system for sure. And and really, it's like if when the heart recognizes the essence is when we know that we are on the path, right? Is when we know that this is ours to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what needs to happen. And so
it's like these elements of you are keeping one another in check.
They are all contributing to the symphony that the heart conducts. Right, that they are all informing the heart. The other one that I haven't mentioned yet is the intention, which is associated with the spleen and the mind. So all of those need to come together and unite in the heart. But yeah, basically, but the heart, for most of us who are kind of who are wanting to live an intentional life aligned with dharma, like that, the Chinese medicine version of that is looking at your mission or your purpose, which is said to live in your kidneys, which has to be recognized by the consciousness, and then
how does a regular lady lady listener?
Yeah.
How do we get our heart and our kidneys in alignment? And like what does that look like on an everyday level?
Well, there has to be time for quiet and reflection. That like sort of that. So kidneys, water element is about being reflective. It's about being inward. It's the most yin of the elements. And so again, in this yang addicted world where all of our attention is outward so much of the time, that it's like we haven't even looked, we haven't taken a whole lot of time to look in, or to self-examine, or to self-reflect. And so it can be as simple as just checking in with yourself periodically throughout the day. Like, how do I feel right now? Like, what's going on for me right now? And taking time, I think certainly we set ourselves up for that. If we take the time to sit in silence, or to write, or to do something that takes us into ourselves, or again, via the pose, spirit of the lungs, of using our physical bodies and our intuition. A lot of times when I'm helping people get in touch with that purpose, or like what's in the next phase for them, I'll have them keep a a journal of where did they come alive today? Like, where were those moments? Who were those conversations with? What were you doing when you felt most that spark of aliveness within yourself, and capturing that, being able to take note of it so that you can have more of it, or so that you can move in that direction and pursue what you're curious about. So it could be as simple as just carrying something around with you and noting, like, oh yeah, this is what really lit me up today.
So the heart, it has to recognize the kidneys' needs and desires, and the kidneys have to recognize the heart, and we have to find that symphony.
Mm-hmm.
I guess where I'm confused a little bit is like, so for me, when I feel the most yin,
Yes,
is actually, and maybe it's because of my past, but is actually when I'm not so self-focused. I'm not so inward, but I'm actually looking at a tree and just like really meditating on it for like a good 90 seconds until I can sense that we've had communication. It's actually like a little bit like, and I know what you mean when you're like, we're always like having our attention pulled out of us, but I think it's almost like an unconscious attention pranic suck. But there is a way that like, I feel so rejuvenated by nature. I can feel it literally coming into me like a love.
Well, that seems like a state of union, like as you're describing that, it seems like you are not separate from the tree. You are exchanging energy with the tree. You are all in the same, because really, like, I mean, that if we shift from thinking of ourselves as a sack of meat and start thinking of ourselves as a sea of energy, right?
That's much better.
Yeah, right? Like a lot more becomes possible.
Hi there, this is Amaury, Program Manager at Shakti School, with a quick update. If you love this podcast and learning about Ayurveda, health, yoga, psychology, and everything in between, we have 2 really special offerings right now that are free. The first is our mini course on Divine Feminine Ayurveda. This is actually a special sneak peek into Ayurveda school. It's 4 hours worth of video and an accompanying workbook. If you're looking for inspiration or just curious about Katie's approach to Ayurveda, I highly recommend this offering. You can sign up for it by going to bit.ly/Ayurveda mini course. That's bit.ly/Ayurveda mini course. And I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes for you. The second offering is a free 30-day trial of our subscription platform, the Lineage of Love. Every month in the Lineage of Love, you get a new seasonally attuned video and audio workshop with Katie. The workshops are a mix of movement, yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, and all the other stuff we love to talk about. The link to register for the free trial is bit.ly/lineage-of-love-free-trial. So I'll definitely put a link to that one in the show notes too. Now, if you know you're ready to go deep and spend a year learning with us, the next session of Ayurveda School starts in January, and the deadline for registration is December 31st. Getting back into the swing of learning can be a big commitment, but it's also the best catalyst for change and evolution. If Katie and I could have every woman do at least level 1 of Ayurveda School, we would. It's a year-long program that will both nurture and challenge you in the best way. It's everything we should have learned as beings with bodies and psyches that we were never taught in school. If you want to have a chat with me about whether this program is right for you, you can put a free call directly on my calendar at calendly.com/Shakti School/free coaching call. That's calendly.com/Shakti School/free coaching call. And will also put that link in the show notes. Have a beautiful day, sisters. Now back to the episode.
And so when I'm working with people like that, the first thing that I have them do is, like, in terms of transcending what they think about their health needing to be, is to stop thinking of themselves in this Newtonian physics kind of way, and instead go to Einstein's physics, to quantum physics, where we are mainly empty space, and so is the tree, and so is everything around us. We're all just this field of energy. And in that moment, it's not necessarily about you as a unique self or a unique being. It's just experiencing what it is to be alive, like in that sort of state of union, which I think is a beautiful place to be. And
suddenly I've realized what we were learning with Dr. Claudia when you and I met at the prana thing. And I am it is not, it's not so much, and it was born out of suffering and necessity, as these great awakenings typically are. Like I realize Mother Earth is always, she is my mother. Like she's trying to mother me.
Yes.
And she's always mothering me, but I have to look at her and I have to let her in. And I think I do sense this deeper and deepening sense of the yin when I let myself be fed by nature. I want to, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, just in general, like, I mean, that experience that you had, it may not be like inward and self-focused, but it's certainly quiet, right? It's certainly, it's a moment of stillness, and it's a moment where you're allowing and you're being, like, in that sense, yes, like quite yin, you know, like, and, but it's, you're not, anyway, I think I was answering the question more on a level of pursuing
the typical mental movement.
Yeah, right. Or, but that, anyways, what was your question?
So I want to go back. You said self-care is a feminist issue, and
Absolutely.
I want to know what that means to you.
What it means to me is that the playing field is not level in our society, right? That like women are still doing the bulk of caring for children, aging parents, a household. And so whether or not a woman is partnered, she has these responsibilities. She's responsible for these things. If she is involved with a man sharing a household, it's likely that she is the one doing most of this work. She's also doing most of the emotional labor and metabolizing, right? Because women, are like, men aren't supposed to have emotions or do any personal growth or go to therapy or do it, you know, like it's like women who are doing all that stuff, and sort of, and that takes effort and attention and awareness. Also, the pay inequality, right? Like women are still paid quite a bit less than men. Women of color even have an even steeper path, right? And so there's pressure for us to leave more energy in the dimension of the work world and the career world, and therefore we're incentivized, like, to have, well, to leave less life force left over for ourselves, and to claim back time for something as simple as getting enough sleep or staring at a tree, as you're talking about, and that really, when we hold ourselves to kind of when we are trying to overachieve or people please or take care of everyone else's needs before our own, right? You know, like there's still this sense that women who take care of themselves, that's somehow self-indulgent. And I would submit that it's actually it's the opposite of self-indulgence. It's actually service, because it's helping us change a culture. It's helping giving other women permission to do the same thing. And I see entirely too many smart women, especially even self-proclaimed feminists, depleting themselves in service of who they think they need to be. Right?
And even wellness practitioners. I mean, we're the worst of the worst. You know,
yes.
That's why I shifted things for myself big time. And it was to say to my students, look, you guys, I know we've all been given this like roadmap of what it looks like to be a successful yoga teacher in America. And let me tell you, they're all burned out. And if they're not, they're doing some kind of drugs or alcohol, because there's literally no way that you could be on that kind of schedule. And I took myself out of that paradigm, and even the whole paradigm of teacher trainings, like 200 hours and like cram it all in. And I just said, this is not working for me. And I think by me doing a different model, now I see that other women are like, can I even do that? Like, can I even charge that? You know, and I think you are doing a service for other people.
It's really, I think the more that we crack open this myth that like everyone else has it all together, it's like, I mean, that's really like a gift that I get as a clinician of working with people one-on-one for 20 years, is that they're telling me like, I can't do it all, and here's the ways that I'm breaking and suffering. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not alone, which is why
Yes,
I
we're not
I started
alone.
bringing women together to do these basically self-care boot camp, like that to really to be together on a path of taking a stand for ourselves and showing up for ourselves by being committed to the absolute basics of self-care that we all need in order to be healthy. Because it's and really it's like in doing that, as I said, we're role modeling that for each other, but also the next generation. And in being vulnerable like you were, of saying like, hey, I'm out, I can't, like I can't do this, I can't even pretend to do this, that requires a great deal of vulnerability and strength in being real, being strong enough to say this this isn't this isn't working for me. This is actually making me miserable and unhealthy, as opposed to the opposite. And I am still learning this lesson. It's like I am really great at holding space for this and talk about it all the time and teach about it. But I'm still like, I feel like I'm such an expert on it because it's been my biggest struggle lifelong.
Totally.
I
But
am a
that's what
young
makes
addict
you
from way back.
But that's what makes you a powerful healer. And I always say to people, I wrote Healthy, Happy, Sexy because it's the book I need to keep on my bedside and read again and again and again. And, we're writing the book we need to read. So
Exactly.
yay that we can admit that. And it's actually makes people, I've gotten the feedback because I try to be really truthful. And I've gotten the feedback over and over that people are like, the reason that I connect with you and this is because you're telling the truth, and energetically it makes people trust you.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, I'm not perfect.
Or, nope. Yeah.
Nope.
So not a guru. So walking the path right there with you.
Right.
And yet, like having like being able to own the things that we've learned along the way, because that's
Yeah.
the other thing.
And being an expert, and you can be an expert, and you are. And I always say to my students, like, look, if you do a year-long program, we have a year-long Ayurveda program, like, you are going to know more than 99% of Americans. Don't you think that you can be a change maker and a helpmate, even if you still have your IBS or your insomnia? Like, stop thinking that. And, I've been researching, I'm geeking out on xenoestrogens, which is slightly peripherally related, where we feel like it's our fault.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
What we are undergoing right now in our tissues is so distinct from what my grandmother or your grandmother or our great grandmothers underwent inside of our bodies. They were not under this onslaught, right, of chemicals that we're under. So, it's not just about like, because I suffered from a lot of anxiety and a lot of digestive issues, et cetera, insomnia. And I thought, what am I doing wrong? I am doing all the self-care. I am doing all the meditation. I am eating healthy. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
And so then I would feel guilty. And then I started understanding, no, like, all of these toxins in our soil and our food and the environment have built up in so many of our bodies, and that can be a cause of all of these imbalances.
It can be huge, and it's really it's so, and I've definitely been there with the self-blame of like, like, what am I doing wrong? I must not be doing enough to heal myself, and it actually is like that. While there's plenty of agency that we have to move the needle in the direction of health, like our everyday actions absolutely are far more important than what any practitioner can do to you or for you, in terms of like the long haul. And yet you're absolutely right. We are dealing with an unprecedented amount of toxins that our immune systems are having to sort out, and which are getting lodged in our fat. And that, for example, like women struggling to lose weight. And it's like, you know what? Your body might actually be trying to protect you from
all this.
like,
yes.
And
exactly. I'm so glad you brought up the non-physical only component, because it's also like that barrier of like the crazy world that we live in as well. So you talk about the main depletion patterns that you see in women and ways we cut ourselves off from our power. I really want to hear about this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to dive into that. I had one more thought on that topic of just in terms of autoimmune disease, that and actually it actually is on this topic too. So like so we all, if we're thinking in a 5-element context in Chinese medicine, like essentially if everything in life is qi, and we're looking through a prism, we can see these different dimensions of the universe, which we can think about as like the colors of the rainbow or the elements of nature, right? And in Chinese medicine, they're wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And we all have these within ourselves in different quantities, right? It's not like every piece of the pie is equal. And so some of these, like kind of the social masks that we get comfortable with to show the world that, to be safe, basically, like that we need to survive in life. And when we're under stress, we contract into a pattern that is most comfortable, right? That is the most comfortable ego mask that we've been creating and shaping, that probably had to do with how we survived our upbringing, right? Like who we needed to be in order to please our parents or early caregivers, or to get through whatever stresses came our way early in life. And that can, as we were talking about earlier, be limiting to the other dimensions of who we are. They can also be, though, that like, let's say you're naturally an earth type, but you grew up in a family that really valued achievement, right? That maybe you took all of your chi and blood away from your earthy, supporting other people, being like grounded, making food for people, being this loyal, caring person.
Which
and
is
you
so needed on our world.
Absolutely. And instead of that, you decided that you were going to just take on the world and drive and strive and achieve, right? And like, so you took your earth energy and you moved it over into wood, and you got really good at looking like a wood type. But what's really underneath there is much more earthy. That's where we get autoimmune disease, right? Like we've got a mismatch between that. We're putting all that, like basically a survival strategy, right? A social mask, a survival strategy, a depletion pattern, whatever we want to call it. But it's like, that's what's showing up on the surface. That's what we're showing the world. And who we are is something else. Yeah. So the greater the distance between what's going on out there and what's in here, that it's basically like we're channeling so much chi and blood and propping up something that isn't us.
Even me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's self-negation. And that's like where we start attacking ourselves of like, you can't be earth, you have to be wood, and we basically turn that judgment against ourselves, and we get the immune system to attacking ourselves. I firmly believe that that's what's landed me in autoimmune disease land. And, and so trying to heal that looks like becoming more authentic, becoming more of who we are. And with
everybody listening, y'all got to get this. You have to figure out who you are and have the courage to step into it. I know when I first started studying Ayurveda, I was like, oh my God, I'm such a Vata. I have all these Vata imbalances. Vata, 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 Vata. And now that I've become maybe just a tiny bit wiser, I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a Pitta with a little bit of Kapha. Like my actual nature is, you're like laughing, right? Because it's so obvious. Like my nature is fire and like a side helping of like water, and love is my language. I'm ooey gooey. I'm a Cancer. I'm super sensitive. Like, it's all me. And that Vata of go, go, go isn't me. Yeah. And I grew up around a lot of that. And so in a way, like I've heard you inherit your mother's nervous system, and like that's sort of another iteration of what you're saying from the family of origin. Mm-hmm. We inherit our family's coping mechanisms and even their nervous system tendencies and their fight, flight, freeze tendencies, and it's so much work to keep that up. So I want everyone out there to just really take that in, that we can have that bravery to be ourselves. And it sounds so cheesy, but it's hard.
Well, especially if your nature happens to be more yin, like what you're talking about, like they're just, or like the ooey gooey love stuff, like that's more yin, certainly.
And I like to be alone. I mean, I get so upset because my mom's like, why are you leaving? You should. My mom is going to have to listen to this podcast because I love her so much. We had the most hilarious conversation because she was like, I'm single right now. And she's like, you're never going to meet a man just sitting inside your house talking to the Ayurveda ladies. She's like, honey, right now, she was like, if I had you and I had your legs, I'd be sitting every day down at that restaurant having lunch. And I just thought, Brodie, there's literally nothing less me than putting on high heels and lipstick and sitting in a place for lunch. Like, ew, and I just was like, Jesus Christ, this woman doesn't know me at all. And yet, there is an aspect of me that is very ebullient and social, and she wants me to bring that out more, which I need to do. But like, the point of it is, you can't, and I think a lot of people like that introvert, a little more introverted, a little more one-on-one, we like get shit on in this society when we don't want to be in that party mode all the time.
Yeah, it can be really hard to claim time and space for yourself in a world that is hyper busy and hyper social. Absolutely. Yeah. And so if that is a part of your nature, recognizing that it takes tremendous strength to honor that within yourself, and because nobody's going to cheer when you do that necessarily.
Right. Yay, you're taking a bath.
Exactly.
We want you to come down here and entertain us with your big facial gestures.
Exactly. Yes. So on to survival strategies. If you are the person who is, that basically, I'm going to define this as ways in which we are either exaggerations of ourselves or creating a persona, right? Creating a persona that isn't really that doesn't really feel true to our nature in order to get by in the world and to survive. And when we're doing these things, I really want to underscore the fact that we all do this to some extent, unless we're living 100% authentically and from within. That it's a rare person who doesn't do some of this some of the time, and we do it because we do it when we're stressed, and stress is the disease that everyone that deals with to some degree, that makes 95+% of every health issue worse, right? And because stress, just thinking about nervous systems, right? That when we're in a relaxed state, we can be ourselves. When we're in fight, flight, freeze, we're contracted, and when we're contracted, we go to safety. We go to those old patterns. So one old pattern that we would associate with a wood type is the overachieving pattern, right? So like maybe naturally you want to teach and lead and grow, and you're always wanting to be on the cutting edge and learning something new. And that may be very authentic, but when you're like, I have to do this or I'm nothing, like that then it becomes an exaggeration of who you really are, right? And so that's going to be like that's going to be like the wood type survival strategy.
Are you going to go through all of them?
Yeah, there's 5.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm like, I hope you're going to go through all these. I'm fascinated.
If you are a fire type, right, you're naturally kind of like fire is always, dynamic and magnetic and warm, and it's very young in nature. And the exaggeration of that is the person who is hypersocial, right? The person who always feels like they have to be the social butterfly, always having to be out in the world, and never gives herself time to just be quiet or to have an off day or to do, to not show up like, a 1,000-watt light bulb. So that's going to be a fire type exaggeration strategy.
I'm loving that. Okay.
A lot of women that I work with fall into the earth type survival strategy. Very caring people, very loyal, they want to support everyone else in their lives, like the earth herself, right? They're generous, they're giving, they're loving, they're supportive. And when that becomes at the expense of yourself, that's where it's the survival strategy. That's where like everyone else gets the sweetness, but none for me. Yeah. That's where like I'm going to like make sure that everyone else in my household has what they want to eat, but I'm going to be eating dinner at 8:00 at night after all the dishes are done, or whatever it is. It's that putting off, not allowing ourselves the same love and support and care that we would so readily give to a friend or to our love, our families, our loved ones. So the people pleasing, that we could even call that the codependent survival strategy, right? That sort of like, I don't have any needs. I don't have an opinion. I'm just going to go along with the crowd because it's too scary to own, my own voice.
Yeah. Exactly. I'd rather focus on your problems and me fixing them than myself.
Yes, exactly. That's another dimension of kind of an overly earthy survival strategy. Then the metal, right? Metal is an element in Chinese medicine it's the only one that's refined, right? We typically don't use metal straight from the earth, right? For so we don't use it in the form of ore. We make it shiny, right? We use gold, we use silver, we use aluminum, we use, these things that have been refined. And so the metal type is it is shiny and perfect, right? Everything's perfect. Everything's just so. Her appearance is just so. She can't gain a single pound over this amount. She always has the perfect hair, the perfect makeup, the perfect clothes, and the perfect life, right? The right
perfect husband, the perfect kids.
Absolutely right. Like this amount of socially acceptable expression of emotion, this amount of, that there's just not a lot of freedom, right? It's
Wow.
that kind of like, it's almost like that keeping up with the Joneses, like having, that idea of the 1950s white picket fence suburban house, like that like if you buy the right things and you look a certain way, then you're safe because everyone's like, oh, she's so successful. Look at her. She's a size 2. She's successful, right? Because in our society where women are supposed to look perfect in addition to doing all the things.
You're the second person
like,
that said
right.
size 2 to me today. I'm like, does size 2 even exist?
But right. I mean, it's like that's there. It's another layer of, it's another way in which women are focused, are taught and praised and valued for focusing on something that's external and superficial and how she looks as opposed to how she feels and letting her body be whatever size it feels like being.
Yeah, let's repeat that for me and for everyone. I feel like Oprah. I'm getting older. I need you to repeat it, Brodie. So it's like, this is the aha moment on Oprah, right? Where she's like, stop. It's like focusing on what it looks like rather than what it feels like. That's just like my biggest takeaway for me, because that just explains everything. It's like, what does it feel like in my body? That's why I want to exercise and maybe reduce a little bit of extra body fat, not because it's about what I look like.
Right. It's about how it feels to do it. And it's about what it feels like from the inside out, as opposed to through the male gaze or the collective gaze of society. Right. And that's, so a way that that metal element can cut itself off. Just to go with like the positive attributes of metal, it can be very discerning, can be very like, they can have exquisite taste, they can be very artistic people, they can be very meticulous and organized. But again, we don't all necessarily need to be alphabetizing our spice cabinets. Like that sort of like, we don't need to be living in exaggeration of it's
metal
in perfect order, right? Or being frankly like too structured with ourselves, not allowing any spontaneity and not being in touch with the spirit of metal, right? The po, that animal instinct. And then we have water, right? So water, there's water types are relatively rare in Chinese medicine, like that. But watery people tend to be drawn to spiritual paths. So maybe there's a disproportionate number listening to this show right now. But that, water types, water seeks its own level, right? They have this tremendous sort of power that to transform the world, that comes from being themselves, kind of like, the water carving a canyon, right? That just the passive power of being itself transforms the landscape. But water, when it hides, a survival strategy that's very watery is being so totally inward and totally withdrawn that we don't allow ourselves to be seen, that we don't.
Oh my God, you're freaking me out. I feel like I identify with some of the things I'm like totally making this about me. Sorry, podcast listeners. I feel like I identify with all of them, but this water thing is making me cry, because I'm like, I feel so myself. And my coping mechanism is close the door, shut her down, nobody see me. I mean, when my book made not many people know this, when my book made the New York Times bestsellers list, that's when I started like literally like not traveling, hiding out in Charlottesville. I don't want to be seen. This is too hard. This is too heavy. There's too much prana coming at me.
Yeah.
That water element resonated so much because I understand that hiding out things so much. And I need it. And like there's
Right.
like a positive, right? And a negative if we were going to put them into boxes.
It's like, yes, you went to where it was safe, right? That, and if you had stayed there, that the fact that like you're not still hiding out, you're here doing this podcast, you're still doing your work in the world.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's like the pendulum has swung back from that, going into retreating into safety and into the water element. But and really it's like, yeah, none of these things are bad to go to, because we all do need an ego, right? We do need something that helps us get through the world, and we do have innate natures that we need to honor. And yet it's just a matter of being able to paint with all the colors in our innate palette, as opposed to just picking up the same one over and over again, or using the same tool from the toolbox, and to being able to really live these self-actualized lives. That's what I love about Chinese medicine, and how it really is it's personal growth and it's health at the same time, and bringing women together to see each other and say like, oh yeah, like, that you don't actually just have to be in that little limited box. You can, you have a safe space to play with these other ways of being, and to step into taking the risks of growing in these different directions, because there's no growth in the comfort zone, right? And being able to self-actualize requires that we get uncomfortable, but that we also do that with other people who can see that and validate that for us, that actually, yeah, like we're not kicking you out of the tribe. You're still, like you don't have to be this, like, when we've got the social mask up, we can't really be known. Right. And so it's part of it, that in our authenticity, we let our light shine in a way that is so powerful, and that I think engenders a level of realness in relationship that we're hungry for.
Absolutely. That's one of my teachers define love is being seen clearly and seeing clearly. And I love that. Like, we do just want to be known for who we really are.
And there's so much healing that can take place with that. Then we can relax, right? Like what the experience of being able to show up messy and fall apart with a friend, and have her be like, I've got you. I love you. Me too. Like that. There's such, if we can take that in and embody that strength that we feel when we are seen and known and loved, that it's like, that could be a daily meditation, right? Like that's that practice of really taking on, like, what would it be like to move through the world as though we were loved and accepted for who we were? Like, what a different life.
That is I want that tattooed on my arm. What would it be like to move through the world as if we were already loved and accepted? We are loved and accepted.
Yeah. If we felt it to our bones.
So I think we'll probably have to close up shop soon. I feel like we need to have you back on. Like, you and I need to have like a regular conversation going. But for our listeners, I mean, you've mentioned so many things, but just what is this Self-Care Manifesto you speak of?
Well, one of the things I realized in coaching, I think it was maybe even the first round of my Level Up group, I asked people what they got out of the experience. And, they were like, oh, well, it was like better energy and better sleep and weight loss and, healthy habits and blah, 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 and all this stuff. But the most common thing that everyone shared was, I feel like I now have permission to take care of myself. And that struck me as like, what a weird thing that we need permission to take care of ourselves. And then I was like, oh, of course we do, because we're socialized to be putting our attention on all this. So I wrote a manifesto. It was like, you have the right to take care of yourself even before that email is answered and before the laundry is done. And so I just basically went off like, that what people need to hear of, like, no, actually you have this right. So I have a very pretty, very wordy thing that people can print out and put over their desk or on their fridge or wherever that I want every woman to have. And it's on my website at brodiewelch.com/remind me.
Oh my God, we're going to put that for you guys in the show notes. I'm having Sarah print that up for me and Sarah and Amaury here at Shakti School. You guys, that's such a great thing to have like on your wall, just like here's permission.
Yeah, it's a really like, it's not enough for me to write that on a self-care prescription pad and remind everyone self-care is not selfish, it's essential, and it's a radical act of feminism that we need to do to move the culture forward. It's like we need that in our consciousness all the time. And so anyway, I so appreciate being able to talk with you, Katie. It's super fun. I'd love to come back and continue this conversation someday.
I'm so happy to have you.
If anyone out there listening would like to connect with me, I'm not a super like social media girl, but I have a weekly podcast, or semi-weekly sometimes, A Healthy Curiosity. And you can always reach out to me at Brodie@BrodieWelch.com, Brodie with an IE and Welch with a CH.
Lady, it's been such a pleasure. You're such a gift to humanity. I loved learning a little bit more about Chinese medicine and all of this erotic kidney heart energy. And thank you. Just thank you so much for being here. And I'll be thinking about you when I'm being watery.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Katie. And
all right,
yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Have a great afternoon.
फूटे फूल